Hey class. In this video, we're gonna start off with week four. I've got a few videos this week. In this one, I'm gonna talk about genre in a little lecture, and then we're gonna start using a new game engine called Bitsy. So there'll be a couple of videos getting started with Bitsy. So I'm gonna start with genre here, and we're just gonna talk about genre as a concept, and we'll give some examples. Um, and so you may or may not be familiar with the word genre. It's sort of it just means like a categorization. So I think once we talk about the different game genres, you'll be familiar with them. But it's just a basic, way of categorizing things in different ways. So we'll look a little bit at the history of genre categories, and then we'll talk about how they work with games and how they're a little bit different than earlier works of art. So just to quickly define genre, genre began as an absolute classification system for ancient Greek literature. Poetry, prose, and performance each had a specific and calculated style that related to the theme of the story. Um, so one thing that is important to highlight there is that, and we'll see this with games as well, when we categorize different works of art by genre, it creates certain expectations or conventions. And so if you go to see, a horror movie, you're going to expect there to be some scary moments in the movie. So it creates kind of expectations, and then through the process of creating the work, we can kind of play with those expectations. Um, so genre is really just a starting point for talking about different ways that we categorize art and how those categories share things like style or themes or other components. Um, it's sort of, there's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to genre. You can debate whether something is part of a genre or not. But it's a useful sort of way of getting started talking about different types of art. So we'll look at some of the traditional mediums and then see how games are a little bit different. In literature, there's some basic forms, prose and poetry, and then some sort of basic genres, epic, tragedy, and comedy. And then there's a lot of subgenres of fiction and nonfiction that have different um, affordances. So, mythology or science fiction has different things that we might expect than, literary fiction or drama or something like that. In nonfiction, the genres kind of refer to this sort of who the speaker is or who the subject is. So autobiography is something that's written by the person who it's about, and biography is written about somebody else. So genre conventions kind of work in different ways depending on the style. Um, and they all sort of like reference back to these sort of basic forms. Some genres also are related to the historical period or like a specific period of work, like modernism or romanticism or things like that. So a period of time with similar themes or similar things going on. So that's literature. Genre kind of starts from here, as we saw with our original quote, but it kind of changes in different mediums. So in film, there are some basic genres: action, adventure, comedy, crime or gangster, drama, epics, historical, horror, musical, dance, science fiction, war, western. So you can see there's kind of a combination here of genres that have to do with what you would expect from the plot, like action versus adventure versus comedy. And then some of them have to do with like what you'd expect from the setting or sort of themes. So crime, war films, westerns, these have more to do with the setting and things like that. Um, and yeah, there's also the auteur system in film. You might have films that are in a specific style, like Hitchcock film or other sort of like movements, or you might talk about like new wave in French cinema, things like that. So again, there's sort of this combination of categories that have to do with the stories and sort of expectations of the stories versus the setting and themes. In art, we tend to categorize in visual art. We tend to categorize things by medium and then by historical movements. So you have drawing and painting and printmaking. These have different mechanical or technical approaches. And then you have periods of art like the Renaissance or things like that. And then we sort of have like genres within genres. So within the Renaissance, we have other genres like history painting and portrait and still life and things like that. So these kind of talk about what we're going to be looking at, like the subject of the work, and then some of the themes might relate to a historical period or styles. And then, of course, the technical aspect of how we make things. So that's a little quick overview. There's obviously a lot more detail to go into there, but just giving some background. So then we get to video games, and we can see the main genres in video games have to do with how they are played. So the big difference with video games is that genre is mostly determined by gameplay rather than theme or any technical aspects or other things like that, historical movements. From a post on genre here, this quote, video game genres are determined by gameplay, what challenges face the player, and what actions he takes to overcome those challenges. So we clearly have sports games, shooter games, racing games, and so on. And so that's what really makes games different. We kind of talked about this at the beginning of the semester, that interactivity, the way that the player interacts with the experience is what makes games really different than other types of art. So let's look at some examples. And as we're going through, normally in class, I would have students give examples. So you could, I'll give you an example and then you could pause the video and see if you can think of other examples of games that fit into these genres. So the first genre is action. Action has to do mainly with real-time gameplay. And so a good example of this is early arcade games. Most of these games were action-based because they had very simple graphics. They didn't have like big stories or lots of art. Pong is sort of, the perfect example of this, where there's very minimal graphics and narrative and sound. And most of the gameplay is through the sort of real-time strategy of moving your paddle. So it usually has to do with hand-eye coordination and timing. That's where the challenge comes in. You can think of like fighting games like Street Fighter are another good example of this. Pac-Man is another example of this. So anything that has that kind of arcade feel to it, where the timing and your hand-eye coordination is a big factor in how successful you are in the game, is going to be an action-based game. Some subgenres in action: platformers, first-person shooters, third-person shooters, racing, fighting. A lot of these genres start to kind of like overlap in different ways, which we'll see. But those are some of the basics. So Mario obviously is an action-based game with a little more going on narrative-wise and graphics-wise, but still the main experience is an action experience. Adventure games are different in the sense that they're not sort of real time. Usually they're slower and turn-based, so you have as much time as you want to kind of make decisions and set your strategy before you move on to the next stage of the game. A lot of adventure games come out of like Dungeons and Dragons, that style of like narrative storytelling. So early text-based games, they're often slower paced and have puzzles and exploration and more elaborate narrative. Not always the case, but generally. And then again, turn-based. So adventure games do not have real-time action. So you can think of like any game where you have turn-based, combat, like Pokemon or something like that, is going to be an adventure-style game. A lot of games combine action and adventure. Probably most games combine elements of those basic genres, but if we're thinking about them as separate things, those are how they're different. This is a screenshot from the game Rogue, which we'll talk about more in a moment. So action adventure, of course, combines real-time play with story or puzzle or other slower elements. Role-playing games are sort of a more specific genre within the adventure style game. So again, originating from Dungeons and Dragons as sort of like narrative style. players control a group of characters or an avatar and gain experience through the game. So you have like experience points a lot of the time, and there's often full storylines where you have like a real long narrative arc. We can see Final Fantasy here is a good example of a role playing game. I'm sure you guys can think of more examples. Simulation is anything that simulates aspects of real world experience. So the goal is to try to recreate something in real life, whether it's a physical based thing, like here we see Flight Simulator, or it could be more of like a political thing, like Civilization. But the idea is to try to recreate real world rules, whether they're physical rules or social rules or other things like that, and then create a simulation based on those. They tend to be, well, they can be either real time or turn based. So obviously, like Flight Simulator is going to be real time, where it uses an action style approach where you're making decisions in real time. Games like Civilization are going to be turn based, where you have time to think about what your strategy is and what moves you want to make. So a lot of like sports games, things like that, fall into that simulation category. Strategy games are sort of another adventure style game where you usually have some turn-based component, but there might be real-time action as well. Like here we see Warcraft 2. It's based on games like Risk, where you have resource management, you have like overall strategic goals, and you have sort of a lot of choices to make to achieve those goals. So it's really a focus on decisions and strategy, thinking long term. Warcraft is a good example of that. There's plenty of other examples you guys can probably think of. Massively multiplayer online. This is, could more generally just be referred to as like networked games, but these are games that have like lots of players. They're cooperative play. You might have individuals like in a battle royale style, or you might have teams where you have sort of squads of players that work together. These are involve social interaction, so that's a big component that gets added in that we don't see in these other genres of games, is that you're working with other people. You're often communicating on a separate channel or through the game interface, through text or through audio. There's often a lot of like external social components to it, like message boards and leaderboards and things like that. And then, they often have combined some other type of genre in them, whether it's first person shooters or sports game, strategy game. Something like Rocket League involves sports simulation along with the networked component. This is an early MMO called EVE Online, which is sort of like a combination of strategy and some action. Then we have casual games. A lot of games fall into this genre. We tend to overlook casual games when we talk about game design a lot of the time because, most gamers are probably playing different style games, but casual games are actually like a huge part of the market when it comes to the games industry, because lots of people who might not play, your AAA releases or even your indie games might play puzzle games on their phone, on the train home from work and things like that. So casual games is actually like a pretty big genre and a big part of the industry. They tend to be short and relaxing or meditative. They're not necessarily supposed to be as challenging as other like action or adventure style games. Usually played on the browser or on a phone. Like you don't have a dedicated gaming device, but you can access it through your phone. You can access it on your computer. They could be embedded on your homepage for your email or something like that. And they often involve puzzles, cards, word games, board games. You could play solitaire, things like that. This is Diner Dash. This was a popular browser-based game in the 2000s, and you sort of manage a restaurant, so it has this simulation component to it, and a little bit of strategy, resource management mixed in there. So the last one I want to talk about is roguelike. This is one of my favorite genres. I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's an interesting example of how a genre emerges. We don't just sit down and look backwards and say these are all the genres. Genre sort of emerges out of people making things and people categorizing those things. So Rogue was an early adventure game with very simple graphics that was designed in 1980 by a couple of people, Glenn Weichman and Michael Toy, who were working at University of California, Santa Cruz, and they wanted to make a adventure game that was sort of inspired by early text-based adventure games, but they wanted to have graphics. And back then in 1980, you couldn't have like a massive game that was like 80 gigabytes of levels and assets and things like that. So one of the ways, sort of clever ways that they figured out how to make a very small code base that they could distribute across the early internet was by using procedural generation or random generation to create the levels and the narrative and the experience of the game. And so every time you play the game, you get a different set of levels. They're based on the same rules, so there's a similar feel, but it's always a different experience. And so what was originally sort of a technical limitation grew into a whole genre because there's this actually fun aspect of every time you play the game, it's a different experience. And they also made it very challenging. So there's a high degree of challenge, which makes you want to play it again and again. It has turn-based play, and it also had permanent character death. So that was part of, if you have a program that's generating levels, you can't replay those levels. So if you die and lose the game, you just have to start from scratch. And so that added to the overall challenge of the game. And so a challenge can be sort of a motivator. If a game is really hard, you're more motivated in some cases to beat the game or to win the game. And so because of these unique components, it inspired a lot of other people to create similar style games. There's whole communities. This links out to Rogue Basin, which just has it's a big wiki with tons of links to resources of making games, different games, talking about how to build rogue games. And then a lot of more mainstream games like Hades is an example of a roguelike. Binding of Isaac is a popular game that uses roguelike components. And so we see a lot of games use those genre components, even if they're not strictly in the roguelike style, but inspired by that original concept. All right, so that's it for our genre lecture. And yeah, we'll move on to working with Bitsy a bit, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of why we use these terms and some of the specifics of what the terms mean when it comes to genre. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.